Welcome back, everybody, to Sia Nejad Sports. Did you miss me? We were sitting here yesterday, me and Femi Abebefe. It was a great show. We went over an hour. I think that's the longest I've ever had a guest on. We had a lot to say. I encourage everybody to go back to listen to that and listen to every other show we've done, but we got another good show. I'm actually really inspired by this guest. And I think, especially if you're on the younger side, you should be inspired too. And the reason I say that is because and Ricky, I'm going to introduce you in a second, but this is just, I just love having you on the show, Ricky Gold, CEO and founder of Juice Reel, because he was a mid-20s guy that had an idea and actually put it in play. And that's really hard for people to do. And it was hard for me to do in my 20s and even in my 30s. So this is one of those guests that I think we can all like learn a little bit from. And I can't wait to hear like the struggle and the success and all of that. So Ricky, sorry for the long intro, but I think you deserved it. I mean, you're still a young man and you've got this app and it's really cool. How you doing today?
Appreciate that. Quite the introduction. Thanks for having me on, Sia.
No problem at all. So real quick, Juice Reel is a really dynamic app and it happens to kind of coexist with what I do. I do a lot of course, I do Sia Nejad Sports, which as everybody knows is somewhat of a misnomer because we don't really talk about sports too much on this particular show. But Ricky, you probably know I do a ton of sports betting stuff. Daily fantasy, and Juice Reel is an app that I think some might think is similar to other apps in that space, but I don't, and I'm sure you don't. This is a very dynamic app that has so much to offer. So if you could just in general terms, you could just tell us what is Juice Reel.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real short of what Juice Reel is it's a full suite of betting tools built for the sports bettor. It's an app that you download. It's free on the App Store or Google Play Store. And how it really works is you download the app, you connect in any of your betting accounts. So if you bet at DraftKings, if you bet at FanDuel, wherever you bet, you connect in your betting accounts and all of your open bets and all of your bet history loads into our app automatically. And we give you analytics on yourself, like how you're doing on straight bets versus parlays and teasers. What are your best teams? What are your worst teams? A lot of analytics that help you understand your strengths and weaknesses. But where things get really interesting is how we use the data that all of our users all connect in to help the whole user base bet smarter. And so I won't give a full rundown all the features, but how it really works is it's a tool to help sports bettors bet smarter, help you decide what to bet on and then where to bet it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is really interesting is you guys kind of showcase where the sharp money is and where it is, and which a lot of other apps do, but you all do it in a way. And listen, we could have a full show on what Juice Reel does. You may as well just go download the app. I'm pretty sure Ricky just said it's free. I have it on my phone as well. So when we have the tag here if you want to download the app, Apple or Android. That's pretty cool that we have that down here. Thanks to James for that. But Ricky, let's go back a little bit because you are a young man. You're not 30 yet. I know when you hit 30, you're going to be like, oh
Gray
my God,
hair is coming in slowly.
I'll tell you what, you got a lot of time before you actually start feeling old. So I want to ask you this. Clearly, at some point, you had an idea. Maybe you were familiar with the gambling space. I know from a previous interview, I heard that your dad was into sports betting and things of that nature. So you had some groundwork, some framework in terms of what sports betting is, what sharp money is, and things that might help a sports bettor. But you had an idea at one point, and it sounds to me like it was a pretty massive idea. And I'm just wondering what happened once you had that idea. What did you do next?
Yeah, I mean, I did grow up in the sports betting household, watching my dad bet on football when I was, as young as it gets, seeing him call it in before the internet was even made, and then, betting on websites when they first came out. So I grew up knowing what sports betting is, but, my background for work at a college was in the data space, data strategy space. But what really, when we think about like, when it got to a point of starting this company, I always recognized something missing in sports betting for years and years and years. the sport, as I watched as sports betting evolved. It went from phones, it went to internet. Now we're in a regulated world where, the sports books are great at doing one thing, except getting you to bet and accepting it. But there wasn't a lot catering to the sports bettors experience where, you ask any sports bettor, how are you doing on NFL this season? And you just about never get a numerical answer.
It's true.
So that my friends and I would always joke around, like, are you lifetime profitable as a bettor? Everybody would say, yeah. No one really, had a real number to go with it. And so that's kind of where the idea started. But, to your question of, when do you go from idea to company? I would just sit every day, how can somebody track bets automatically? No one wants to fill out spreadsheets. No one, if you're filling out spreadsheets, you miss 1 week, you have, all everything you've done, no one's going and catching up on all their bets. And so it needed to be automatic. I just started thinking, why wouldn't this work? What would I need to do? Every last instance of work, who would I need? How would I do it? And it was just something I would think about constantly and try and poke a hole in it. Well, what if this happened? What would I need to do? So there's a lot of poking holes and advancing the idea until I really had everything planned out to a T.
I love that. I love the idea of turning it around and finding out, well, where are the weak spots so that going in before you formulate a team. Let me ask you this. So you had the idea, but you mentioned a data background. So go into that, because obviously for me, without like any sort of data, or you're going to have better words than I will, accounting background. I don't have like a big numbers background outside of the gambling world itself. So I'm just curious, what was that background that allowed you to go through those mental impressions of, well, what will work? Where are the weak spots? Where are the holes? Like, what is that background?
Yeah. In college, I went to University of Florida, the Gators. Did industrial and systems engineering there. And then when I was working at EY doing tech consulting, mostly for banks. Coming right out of college, are mostly doing grunt work, stapling papers and making PowerPoints. But I had an opportunity to leave EY and go to this great company, Knowledgeant, which was a boutique consulting company, where they said, hey, you can run this project. If you do a great job, you'll make a lot of money. And if you do a bad job, we'll fire you. And that's the kind of thing that excites me. And I've worked with a lot of really smart people. And the main thing I was really doing there was designing a data cleansing engine for a bank. And I used some of the things that I had picked up from my colleagues back at EY. And what a data cleansing engine really means is, banks have so many systems talking to each other. You have a new customer, you have someone deposits a check. A million banks have tons and tons of systems. Somebody needs to go and clean it up. So, Ricky Gold is the same as Rick Gold, and is the same as, and make it all mesh together. And it's actually not so different from what we do at Juice Reel when it comes to connecting in your sports betting accounts, where if you connect in account from this sports book and that sports book, somebody might say KC Chiefs and somebody else might say Kansas City Chiefs, but to the user, those need to be the same thing. And so there was some overlapping concepts of things I learned about through my time in consulting. Spent a little time at Google, and really just picking up some of the tools that I learned along the way and applying them to the sports betting space was kind of how I took what I learned and turned it into this company.
It's funny you say the thing about the names, like KC Chiefs versus Kansas City Chiefs. It sounds like such a minor detail, but it can, from a database standpoint, and this is just something I've learned, Ricky, that can be a really big problem. And I'll tell you, in golf, I actually did one of these shows, Sia Nejad Sports, with Rick Gaiman, who he runs RickRunGood.com.
I know Rick.
He's
great guy.
What'd you say? You know him?
I know Rick. He's a great guy. He's a great golf analyst.
Oh my gosh, he's such a great guy. I'm very lucky to be able to do the first cut with him. And he's been on this show before too. But I know just kind of behind the scenes when, for example, like Matthew Fitzpatrick wants to be called Matt Fitzpatrick, or when Cam Davis wants to be called Cameron Davis, and that gets sort of changed in whatever the database arena. Like that's not an easy thing to just like, type up and fix, right?
No, it's a huge thing, and we're a startup and we're nimble enough, but there are billion-dollar companies that are around managing that.
Exactly. So let me ask you this. I want to ask you about what the next step was in terms of formulating a team. I'm assuming at a certain point you consulted with people, but I'm just curious when you were doing that sort of trial and error in terms of what are the holes in the weak spots and how can this move forward. Was that a months long process where you were just kind of working internally by yourself, or did you kind of hammer that out in a few weeks and then you're like, okay, now I need to get a team together?
I'd say even longer. I'd say it was closer to a year-long process, probably about like 8 or so months thinking about it. I would be up at night. That it'd be the only thing I'm thinking about. Why wouldn't this work? Who do I need? And then I started writing it onto a paper and, mapping it all out and really mapping out the first, two or so years of the business as detailed as possible. I'd say, an 8-month process, and, when it came to starting a team, I already had kind of the roles and the buckets of the exact types of people that I would need to go and find. And, I can get into how I found them. It makes
I do. So that's going to be my next question, but I want to just stop on the 8 months thing because Ricky, I think a lot of, especially younger people like yourself, they don't have the patience to do something internally by themselves and just work it out slowly over time, over 8 months. And I just think it's really important for people to understand what Ricky did. All he did was give himself the time and the patience to actually work through some of the stuff before he sped it up too fast and got a team before everything was in order. And I just think that's really important because, Ricky, we live in this sort of instant gratification world where everything is quick and we go on Instagram or we go on Twitter and we see the success stories of certain people and it looks like they just turn success, over in a flash. And a lot of times that's not really the case. You're just seeing what they're putting out on social media. So I just think it's a really good stopping point to know, well, Ricky was doing this kind of by himself, staying up late at night, working stuff out for 7, 8, 9 months. And then he graduated to what must have felt like step one for you. What it wasn't step one, but it probably felt like step one for you 8 months later in getting a team together. How did you assemble the team?
Yeah, honestly, at that point, almost felt like step zero. But at least looking back, it's the way, and the way that I found the people that I worked with. Actually, my girlfriend is a recruiter now for Pinterest, and I used her LinkedIn recruiter account and looked for other 3 different specialties: someone to build our front end iPhone product, someone to manage our back end AWS product, and someone to manage some of the syncing side. And I actually used my girlfriend's LinkedIn recruiter to find a few of these people, cold message them, hey, I have this idea. This is what I think, and this is where I think you fit into it. Do you want to meet for coffee in the city? I only looked at people with in the New York area. Mm-hmm. Took each of these people out to coffee and sat down and was like, we had a good hour-long conversation. This is my idea. This is why I think it's going to work. And do you want to come work for? Do you share this vision and want to come work for free for sweat equity and build this company with me? And I got someone in each of those segments to be in and be excited. We all had day jobs. We had our 9 to 5s, and we worked every night since then. And this was maybe 4 years ago now.
That's amazing. So I know this sounds like a mundane question, but I think the process is really important. Did you meet with them one-on-one and then all together once you had kind of figured out who was going to be on the team?
Yep, we all met one-on-one. Then once we had a whiteboard session in my apartment on 10th Street and Avenue A, it's garage startup-y as it gets.
That's amazing. And so, how long was everybody? I don't want to get into finances, but I assume you guys, now that Juice Reel is out there, like now people are getting paid. There's some revenue coming in. How long was everybody working for no money?
We took the product from inception and coffees and sweat equity all the way to launch on the App Store, which took about 2 years. everyone sweat. Team actually grew beyond those 3 people by the time we got to App Store launch. Did it with raised no money to get us to launch. And a 2-year process of working every day after work.
So after work, the key point there, because I was just on with Femi Abebefe yesterday, and this has been kind of a prevailing theme. And I just think it's important to reiterate, Ricky, you were doing this kind of on the side because you wanted to maintain whatever was coming in financially during the day. So effectively, you had 2 jobs, and your entire team signed on for 2 jobs as well as soon as they met you.
Yep, exactly.
One of which they weren't getting paid for.
100%. We raised our first bit of capital back in 2021, and now we have some full-time employees, and the product's obviously a bit more down the road than it was in 21. But yes, there actually are still some people who have been with us for years who still have that second job, and as we raise more money and keep growing, we're taking more and more of them to be full-time. But that kind of shared vision was critical to getting where we are today.
Let me ask you this, because when you're on like LinkedIn Recruiter or whatever it was, and you meet these people, I don't know if you were looking for something. Obviously, you were looking for certain expertise, and you can't get a personality profile on LinkedIn as far as I know. So was there sort of a central theme among all 3 of these initial, were they all guys or girls? I don't want to refer to them incorrectly, but these 3 people, was there something about each of them that led you to believe, okay, aside from their expertise, this is somebody I know I need to work with?
Yeah, I think the sweet spot, at least for us, was 20 some odd, 20-ish, somewhere between 20 and 32. Some people who are been in the working world for a couple of years and going, this, I don't like the track that I'm on. I may have a good job, but I don't feel great about it. I don't love what I do. Everyone who we worked with, came from a prestigious job, but they weren't necessarily passionate about it. And I think they spent a couple of years in the working world and knew in their heart it wasn't for them. And I think, our vision for what we were building really resonated with them.
So stopping point before I ask my next question, I'll ask my next question first. At what point, by the way, are you still working your day job, or are you all in on Juice Reel?
No, I left my job. I think it was December of 2021.
Okay. So between whatever it was, 2019 and 2021, it sounds like you were probably working both jobs. Maybe it was 2018 and 2021. But I'm curious, how did you manage that? Because it sounds like you have a girlfriend. You don't have kids, as far as I know. But from a time management standpoint, it had to be exhausting to be in this bank world and then come home. Maybe you go work out. I don't know what your sort of day to day is, but did it become frustrating that you basically had no time to yourself?
I don't think frustrating is the right word for how it was. It was definitely a lot, and it was definitely consuming. There's a little bit of a thrill or an enjoyment to it that I was excited to build. It doesn't feel like work. It still doesn't feel like work. I mean, the day-to-day grind, is its own beast. But it didn't. I wouldn't say frustrating. I would say consumed. And I was definitely working full-time job hours plus full-time job hours on Juice Reel. And what really drove me to leave my full-time job was I would stop. It started eating too much. It used to be day job by day, Juice Reel by night, and it turned into Juice Reel to be by day and by night. And I had a day job, and when I started to not be able to take day job calls at 1 p.m. It was I didn't want to ever disservice clients that we were working with. So that's really when it was time. It was time to go.
So, and I think that's a point I brought up with Femi yesterday, is that you can do the 2-job thing. You got to find the time for the 2-job thing if you're pursuing a dream as that sort of second thing, and you maintain it until you can't maintain it anymore. I mean, there's going to be a time where it's going to be very obvious that you need to graduate from one to the other. And Ricky, it sounds like that time was obvious for you. But I'm curious, between the time that you thought of the idea, you get a team together, and then you launch in the App Store, between point A and point Z being the App Store launch, was there any like major adversity that you met where it was like, oh, I'm not so sure about this. This might not be as good of an idea as I thought initially.
Yeah, I mean, adversity like that, that comes back then, it comes today, but you can't let that disrupt what you're doing. When you're working with people for sweat equity and, somebody says they're busy and the rest of the team needs, this guy to do their part, that's a stressful situation. And, they have a life, they have a day job, and this isn't their, high paying job that they need to report to. That causes, difficulty. It causes not just, adversity for me, it's, adversity for the whole team. And it's my job to make sure that the team is happy, the team is excited. And so, there's lots of adversity, particularly, the earlier you are, it's the challenges are always evolving, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's doubts along the way, rejections, more rejections than I can even think of when it comes to raising money. People don't take your, you're calling DraftKings, why don't you care? When we don't even have a product in the App Store. But say, you just keep growing. You need to be dialed in. You need to truly believe in it. And, when the doubts creep in, you just got to put them aside and know what you're doing.
And just to put sort of a silver lining on that story, my understanding is that, I mean, you mentioned that you have investors now and things of that nature, but you've got some big time people and you don't have to reveal any names or anything, but you got some big people that have been in some big, major networks, if not sports media networks, that are now invested in Juice Reel, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a great team of investors that have came on, and I don't know if I should name the names. I don't know if they want me talking about them, but these are brilliant people, people who know the space and are excited about what we're doing.
And I'm just curious, like if we can kind of go back to that moment where, I mean, obviously there's a lot of things that are really cool for you in terms of like the app gets launched in the App Store. That's just like a very cool thing. But once you got like maybe the first big investor, the first couple, I think that almost like ratifies, hey, this idea that I love, other people love it too. This is great. We're moving forward. Can you just describe to me what that moment was like? Like literally that moment where you knew like sort of for lack of a better way to say it, like the deal was closed. Is that like a Tiger Woods fist pump moment? Is it like, are you just very balanced and you just don't really have those moments because you're always looking forward? And so it's not a success yet because you've got another goal to tackle. How do you handle the success?
My personality is definitely more of that latter. I'm pretty level headed. I don't like to get too excited. I know, I know the road is still long even from where we are today. Mm-hmm. But, there are a couple moments that really do feel like achievements. I think the first one, took 3 or so years to get to was being on the App Store. You can touch it. You can download it. This exists. It's no longer a PowerPoint. It's no longer, a bunch of people talking about it and are, working to build it. So that was probably the first moment I was like, look, we actually made something. But yeah, the first investment, was small relatively to things, but the first time someone goes, I believe in you, I believe in what you're doing, I see your vision, and I'm going to put my money where my mouth is definitely a powerful moment.
Let me ask you this, because one of the prevailing things on Sia Nejad Sports, listen, there's a lot of themes that kind of come and go and are threaded among each show. And one thing that comes to mind is a support system. And I don't know the answer to this question. I'm just asking you, did you have a support system? Because when you have a grand idea like this, there can be a lot of people, whether it's your girlfriend or whether it's your buddies or your colleagues that you work with at the bank that are like, yeah, that's a neat idea, but good luck with that, or something that's just not very encouraging. Or did you have people that were like literally the opposite of that and who were encouraging you along the way? Because I do think it's important to have a support system. It's not necessarily integral. Like you could have done it without one. I'm just curious if that was there for you.
I have a loving family, loving girlfriend. I have, friends that I care about, but I don't think a support system around this business, it was something that I could have, relied on. You have, I think, a lot, it's way, friends, family, just about anyone you come across will go, what if this company did that? Or, I don't know if you should focus on your day job. You're doing good at your day job. So I don't think, I had a support system to rely on. I actually think that would have slowed me down had I relied on a support system. I think it really needs to come from within.
That's a really interesting point because, one thing, David Meltzer was on this show. Everybody, if you don't follow David Meltzer, he's at David Meltzer across all social media platforms. Really, he's an entrepreneur like yourself, Ricky, and he's a former NFL sports agent and motivational speaker, travels all around the world. He's great. But one of the things he said when I first met him was, your mom really loves you, but she's not necessarily going to give you the best advice. There's certain people that are in a place to give you really good advice, and there's certain people that are not. And some of the people around you that really love you and really support you and want the best for you, they can give you bad advice too. Not because they're trying to give you bad advice, but I think it's an interesting point you bring up, because I don't think a lot of like the regular person who doesn't have the data background and who doesn't have the sports betting vision with the app, I don't know that they could have been a support system for you. And I mean, they might have been generically encouraging, but Ricky, I do think that's a really good point. Sometimes you just have to know that what you're doing is the right thing. And it's, mom and dad or sister, brother, or even your friends aren't necessarily going to understand what the goal is.
Yeah, I agree. It really does. I think, it's so much easier to say no, or it's not going to work, or like, it's just, it's too big of a mountain. I think that, you just really have to know, and the day-to-day grind is definitely probably the biggest challenge to the whole thing, is that it's a 7-day-a-week job, constant. Yeah. And it's easy to go, no, it's not going to work. This is why. And like, I won't do this every single day for the next years. And that's definitely the hardest part.
And that's the part that turns Juice Reel into a success ultimately, because again, one of the central themes of this show, and one of the things that I'm trying to do, because this was my experience too, I'd have a great idea and I would take step one, and step one was easy because it's step one. And then I'd get to step two and I just would fold. I would quietly fold into the night because I thought it was impractical, or I heard somebody tell me that it wasn't a good idea. Whatever the case may be, it's so easy for people to give up on step one or step two. You just have to work through it. You just have to know that, you are advancing your idea, even if you're not seeing the returns right away, which is why I really wanted to focus on the 8-month thing. I mean, to be at that by yourself, without a team, without any feedback for 8 months is really telling on your perseverance. I think that's amazing. Let me ask you this: as far as Juice Reel is concerned, what's next for you and Juice Reel? You're just trying to get the word out, I assume, but are there any sort of goals or mile markers that you're looking at now as you sit here today?
Yes. So we actually is actually a milestone we recently hit, where we had rebuilt a lot of the app from that we released at the beginning of May. That is really just an eons better product from what we had, all along. We were scrapping it together, grinding. And then we got to a place where, like, now let's go address it strategically. We can see that people want this product or this flavor of a product. And, we had spent the last, starting in about November, building out this next, what we call internally Juice Reel 2.0. And we released that at the beginning of May. And it's, I'm really proud of this product that we've just rolled out. Now this next stretch of now through the end of football season is just getting more and more people on and enjoying it and spreading the word.
So again, I have one or two more questions for you, Ricky. But if you want to get on Juice Reel, Ricky, correct me if I'm wrong, you just go to the App Store and you type in Juice Reel, right?
That easy.
Or you can, if you're watching this, there's literally a QR code on the screen. It's been here for the last 29 minutes. So you can just put your phone up to that and download it on Apple or Android. Before I get to my final question, Ricky, I do want to point something out that I think is, a lot of the questions I asked you were very just run-of-the-mill practical questions. And there's a reason for that. There's no reason for me to be sensational with you. What I'm trying to do is give people the tools that I didn't have 15 years ago, that I didn't have 20 years ago, and that I know for a fact that a lot of people don't have. And so it's creating habits, it's creating that persevering mentality that you had, and just kind of pushing through to actually achieve the goal instead of just like have an idea and then just like let it waste away. And what I think is really interesting about your setup, and I just want to go back to it real quick. Now, you went on LinkedIn Recruiter and all that, and you reached out to people effectively on social media. I don't know what we call LinkedIn. It's certainly an advanced business-minded social media, but it's social media nonetheless, as far as I'm concerned. And I just want to impart on anybody that ever listens to this. And we talked about it specifically on Derek Brown's episode of Sia Nejad Sports, which was a few weeks ago. You all have social media. You might not have the LinkedIn Recruiter account that Ricky had access to, but the bottom line is, Ricky, if anybody wants to start a podcast, for example, forget about an app, okay? They can start an app this way too. But if you want to start a podcast, or you want to get your name out there, or you have a product that you want to drive, or you want to show up on Shark Tank one day and you have this product, but you don't have all the tools necessarily to complete the project, you can go on social media. You can reach out to people within, I don't know, a 60-mile radius like Ricky did. You meet up for coffee and you start banging out a team. And there you have it. Like you now have a support system that can actually advance your idea. And it doesn't have to be all about you. And Ricky, I just kind of wanted to point that out because it sounds so easy what you did, because it is. You just went out and you figured out like, hey, who fits the profile of what I want for this app? Let me meet up with them. Oh, are they emotionally and mentally invested in this? Check that box. Okay, they're on my team, right? It was that easy, right?
Yeah, that, except you message 50 people who have that profile and you'll get 3 responses.
That's right. You know, it's funny. I'm so glad you said that, because that's the exact thing we talked about on Derek Brown's episode, which was just a few weeks ago, Ricky, was that you might reach out, whatever the context is, to somebody and they might say no, which is why you don't reach out to somebody. You reach out to 50 people or 100 people. And those 2 or 3 yeses that you get, or the feedback you get from those 2 or 3 people that have the time to get back to you, that makes all the difference in the world. And Ricky, these people got back to you. And if they hadn't, obviously you wouldn't have them on your team. But the point is, you reached out, they got back to you. Now you have this product. I mean, I hate to reduce it to that, but mechanically, that's what it was, right?
Yeah, I would go that far. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it takes that and sticking with it is really the formula.
Oh, no, and that's the thing. I mean, you obviously would have had, in Ricky's case, you obviously would have had to invest the time and effort you did, Ricky, for 8 months, and then you would have had to persevere and manage those 2 jobs, which again, on Sia Nejad Sports, we talk about that all the time, that it's not about, you know, having a dream and chasing that dream and leaving the practicality of the job that's giving you a paycheck. There's nuance to it, and you have to manage it, and you have to figure out, okay, how can I manage both? Because there is time to do both. And then when can I jump from point A to point B? It might not be for 8 months or 12 months or 24 months, but there will be a time where you can graduate to the actual dream job. You just have to put in the time to maintain both. Ricky, let me ask you, all my guests, before I let them go, I ask them the following question. If you could thank 3, and families excluded here, so no parents or sister or brother. If you could thank 3 people right now for putting you in the place you are today, whether that's like the actual practical place, like, you know, CEO, founder of Juice, or just from a mindset standpoint, who would those 3 people be that you'd thank because they put you in the place you are today?
Now that is a good question. Who would I thank? I think, you know, there was someone by the name of Evan Glussman, is kind of one of the first. He wasn't our first investor, but he was someone who I met who, you know, he instantly understood what we were doing, instantly goes, I love this, and was someone who didn't know me a thing in the world, and decided I want to help him. He knows lots of people around Las Vegas, and he goes, I want to help him. And we've become longtime friends now by this point, and he's definitely helped me where we've gotten to today. So I'm definitely thankful for Evan's existence. So I guess that's one person. And, you know, two other people, I'd say would be Dan Mason and Dick Foreman, who I've recently met. Dan's the former CEO of CBS Radio and former chairman at VSiN, which is a sports betting network. And between him and Dick Foreman, they see it the same way. Really, honestly, a really similar kind of almost persona to Evan. They've just, we've all resonated together. Like we all are just on the same page and interact and go, look, there's something here. And it's just like my team, really. This is when you get into when you find somebody or groups of people who see what you see and get as excited as you get, and want to help and want to contribute. It's just something that I just appreciate it.
Yeah, it's powerful. It advances the ball, if you will, just to like
Yeah.
sports analogy, but like you're piling up the yards, you're getting towards the goal that you want to achieve. So, hey, that those were three. Sorry, I excluded family. It makes it super tough. So I kind
Yeah,
of
it does.
I threw a curveball on you there. But Ricky, I think first of all, I think this app is great, but I just think it's really cool that you, as a 25-year-old, kind of like you're just walking right into the COVID era too, where a lot of people gave up. And I can understand where they might have come from there because, things were just kind of like wilting at that point, especially in the sports arena for quite some time. But for you to have sort of picked that idea up at 25 and actually put it in play and now have, the investors and the backing that you all have, I truly think it's impressive. And I think a lot of people can learn from you, whether they're 45 or 25 or 65, because these things can be accomplished. And Ricky did it the right way. He put it in the time, but then he put a team together to make sure that he could basically advance the ball as far as he possibly can. So Ricky, really appreciate your time. Anything else to impart on us? Anything coming up for you individually or for Juice Reel that we should be paying attention to?
Well, first off, thank you for having me, and I really appreciate you making me smile for how you're talking about me. But no, I mean, I think I'm excited about what we've made, and to anyone watching, download Juice Reel, check it out, and if you have feedback about the product, send it our way. But we're here to make the best sports betting tool on the market.
I absolutely love it. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Ricky Gold. We've had a good week. We had Femi yesterday from VSiN, by the way, Ricky. We had Ricky today. We're going to have a really great guest next week as well. So this has been Sia Nejad Sports. That's Ricky Gold, CEO and founder of Juice Reel. My name is Sia Nejad, and we'll see you next time on Sia Nejad Sports.